Hello. You are listening to CPA Career Path podcast with Rosie Flaherty, CPA MSA. This is episode number 10. Our special guest today is Ben Collingard, CPA, a shareholder at Posing Professional Group, LLC. Hey, Ben. Thank you so much for the interview today. First and foremost, can you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ben Collingard. I am a shareholder at a small tax-focused public accounting firm in Reno, Nevada. I had a great time meeting you at the AICPA Leadership Academy last fall, and look forward to seeing you at AICPA Engage here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I love public accounting and I love tax. That's pretty much all you need to know about me.
I met Ben at the AICPA Leadership Academy. That is a program that AICPA selects less than 40 people across the country to be in this leadership program for 5-day program. And you learn a lot about leadership from this program. If anyone interested in this program, contact me or contact Ben for this program. It's really good. I had a great conversation with Ben when we were at AICPA Leadership Academy, but I want to go deeper about your career path, how you end up with where you are right now, and also why did you choose the accounting as your major at the very beginning?
Definitely. Accounting was not my first choice in college at all. I kind of took the long route through college. I think it took about 6 years to graduate. I was an economics major because I thought that would be interesting. And then I switched to social work and, kind of social justice type stuff. And then I dropped out. And actually, after asking my now wife's parents for their blessing to propose, they said yes, with the condition that I had to go get a college degree at some point. And my fiance at the time was a CPA and worked at her dad's CPA firm. And so I thought I'd give accounting a try and learned how much more it is than just bean counting or, the kind of stereotypical, and learned how much you can really help businesses. When I realized that accounting will give me an exposure to such a wide variety of businesses, I realized it was a really interesting major and would give me the tools to really, get to interact with a lot of interesting industries and interesting people. So kind of took the long way to get there, but that's how I ended up there and why I stayed with it.
So did you enjoy accounting classes?
That's a good question. It would depend on the class. I will say I was lucky enough to have a few really inspiring professors at University of Nevada, Reno, who I'm still remain friends with to this day. That being said, I have to say that the most interesting parts of accounting, I think, aren't taught in the classroom. There's some very interesting concepts and some fun problem sets. I definitely enjoyed the job a lot more than I enjoyed the classes.
So do you have any internships before you graduate, or you went straight full-time job after you graduate?
Kind of both. So instead of an internship, I actually accepted a full-time position as a staff accountant in a public accounting firm about a year before I graduated from UNR. So it would have been an internship other than that I was working 40 hours a week. Yeah, I definitely dove in head first, and I started at the firm I'm actually a partner at now with about a year left on, in my undergraduate program, and worked in it for that last year of school.
So how did you know about this firm when you were in college? Did you go to the career fair or someone introduced you?
You could say I was introduced. It's the firm my wife was working at and that her dad had founded. I was kind of going to school for accounting so that I could come work at this firm. Definitely a little bit of a cart and horse situation where I'd only ever intended to work at this firm. I had actually gotten an opportunity to interview with KPMG from an audit professor at UNR. And I had a pretty extensive talk with the founding partner at this firm with, should I consider this? And I know I've been doing this, accounting degree so that I can come work at your firm, but this seems like it could be a really interesting opportunity. And he had a really frank conversation with me, and he honestly encouraged me to go give the Big Four a shot. I think I would struggle with the kind of cog in a wheel type environment where, you're working on so many things and not even necessarily seeing the end product, let alone feeling like you were impacting it, after my conversations with my professors. And I realized that small firm accounting was really what I was excited to do. And so I stuck it out at the firm I'm now.
Like at that age in college, it's too young to know what you really want, like for your whole life or for your whole career. At that time, how do you decide that you want to go for tax instead of trying something else for audit?
I have a couple of jokes, and then I'll get into it for real. My first joke is, the only two things in life that are guaranteed are death and taxes. And I didn't want to be a mortician. And so I thought that, tax was about as safe a career path as you could find. And, my other joke is I don't want my clients to be legally obligated to hire me. I want them to, hire me because they want to, not because the SEC is making them. Honestly, it was my father-in-law, who's now my business partner. I saw the lifestyle he had. I saw the relationship he had with his clients. On the tax side, I think you really get to play a much more involved advisory role. You really can help people run their business and guide them. Whereas, on the audit side, you have independence rules and, other things that can sometimes get in the way. And I live in Reno, Nevada. There isn't nearly the demand for audit here. There aren't nearly as many, publicly traded companies. And so, while there's still plenty of firms that do a lot of audit work, the clients that I really looked forward to working with were clients who hire a CPA for taxes. And they, maybe they need a reviewed financial statement every now and again, which we'll do, but they don't need audit. I was fortunate enough that I actually had the opportunity to work a full-time job that could support me through college pretty comfortably. And that was in the construction industry. I did estimating for a really large architectural millwork firm. Essentially, it's fancy. It's like really fancy woodworking. But I realized that I really like working with contractors and people in the construction industry, and that little more kind of blue collar type environment. And that most of the construction companies, any of the construction companies that would work with a local CPA in Reno don't need audits, and so they're not looking for an auditor. They're looking for someone to help them kind of tax plan and strategize on the business side. And so I just knew tax was going to get me into the rooms that would let me have the conversations that I really look forward to having.
So you mentioned that you work at another company before you work in public, and you work at that job during the time you were in college. So now I'm wondering what skills that you learned from that job during the time you were in college that you could use after you graduate in accounting.
I think that could take up the rest of our conversation here today. I keep talking about kind of the advisory role that I like to occupy in accounting. And so, specifically for my construction clients, I've had construction clients ask me, hey, can you evaluate my estimating template? Let me know what I'm overlooking. And so, I'm not just, tracing through the Excel formulas, like someone who maybe had just gone to college and didn't have the experience. I'm also looking at it and saying, hey, yeah, you have 8 hours of work in for each day, but aren't you guys going to have to, drive to the job site and pay for parking? And, so maybe you should do a factor of 1.1 or 1.15, for every man hour. And, kind of those specific things, because, I would bid a job and we'd lose money and I'd have to go figure out how. And so, it can be as granular as that, where it's, specifically, I built estimating templates. I can help you review yours, or it can just be, the ability to speak contractor. It's, it's kind of a phrase I use where, every industry has a different colloquialisms and manners of speaking and just manners of conveying information. For example, we have a lot of medical clients. Our doctors don't want an answer from us until it is 100% correct. They want it, research it all the way through 3 times backwards and forwards. Whereas if a contractor calls you with a question, he doesn't want to hear you hem and haw or go back and forth, or, they'll say, quit wringing your hands. Tell them to the best you know. And if you were wrong, tell them you were wrong. And so I think just the comfort interacting with people in that industry, as well as that industry specific knowledge, put me in a really good place to serve that industry. And so for that reason, I'd say about 70% of my clients are contractors.
Wow. So do you have another construction license besides a CPA license?
I don't know. And it's funny, I've considered looking into it. Up until now, it was, kind of getting the CPA license, before I was focusing on other things. CIFP is what I'm considering getting, the, certified, or the construction industry financial professional certification. I'm involved in various organizations in town where, they push it, the Builders Association of Northern Nevada and things like that. I actually just got accepted into a Masters of Taxation program for this fall. So one thing at a time. So I'll definitely do that first, and then I'll probably turn for the CIFP designation.
You just bring up a very interesting point. So you are a partner now. You have a CPA license, and now you're going to get a master in tax. What makes you want to go to get a master degree when you're already a partner in tax, and then you already have a CPA license, and you have so many years of experience already?
That's a great question. It's a question I ask myself sometimes when I look at the class schedule and I realize I'm giving up my Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings for the year and a half, starting in October. For me, it was really easy. I want to keep getting better at my job. And, with all of the work I'm doing, sure, when, a new tax bill comes out, the CARES Act or, the Tax Cuts and Job Act in 2017, it gives you the opportunity to kind of research and learn. But otherwise, the continuing education required for certified public accountants will give you enough you need to stay up on things, but you're not really going to drastically improve or get way better at your job just by doing that. And so, looking at what I do, I think that the biggest hole or potential hole in my knowledge and my ability to serve my clients is, all of the tax code I haven't been exposed to. The things that are specifically applicable for contractors, of the size that I work with, I'm sure I know most of those. But as other things come up, I would hate to do a disservice for my clients because I didn't know something or wasn't aware of something. And so I did a lot of research to find a Masters of Taxation program that wasn't a CPA exam prep course, because I think a lot of the Masters of Accountancy programs can lead that way. And so I actually found Cal State University, Northridge. They require you to have 3 years of professional experience or to already have your CPA license to get into the program. And so they're really just targeting making practicing professionals better, as opposed to, goals to pass a test that you've already passed. And so I'm doing it so I can keep getting better. I think it's the easiest thing I can do as far as, not having to, look up 50 different CPEs or lectures on my own. I sign up for one program, and over a year and a half, I think it's going to make me a lot better at my job for my clients, make me more valuable for them. Also, I think it doesn't hurt that when people are looking for a tax professional, there's, CPA license is big, but there's a lot of people with the CPA license. And at the end of the day, if the client was good enough at tax to be able to tell who's good at tax and who's not by talking to them, they wouldn't need a tax guy. And so just having something else to kind of differentiate myself from someone else and show that I am so committed and focused on the tax side, I think being able to put MST, behind the CPA in my email signature will help with that a little bit too.
So since you already did a lot of research about the MST or MSA or MBA, I was wondering if you can give some ideas. If you already have a CPA license, which degree would be the best for you?
I think that answer has to be, especially if you're going back after you have your CPA license, it has to be on an individual by individual basis. For example, if you're not doing hardly any tax, don't go get an MST. That would be the worst thing you could do. I don't want a Master of Science in Accounting because I do very little gap work, right? So getting better in my, gap skills isn't going to help me in my career or help my clients. I think the MBA is really attractive, and I think more accountants should do it, especially if you don't have any experience in industry. If you haven't actually worked in a business environment and you've only worked in public accounting, I think an MBA would give you a lot of exposure to help make you that more valuable advisor for your clients. Or if you're solely in, CAS or advisory, then the MBA is a good option. I feel like I have enough why I ruled that out for myself was because I'd worked for, 4 or 5 years on the operational side, in a business that's not public accounting. And so that's why I didn't go that route. But I think that we'll see more and more accountants pursue the MBA. It helps make you different. At the end of the day, you being better at really specific gap stuff that doesn't apply to that client isn't going to help that client nearly as much as you understanding, general business environment and concepts better. And it's funny, we actually have an intern now who got his undergraduate degree in accounting, is working on getting his license, but he's also enrolled in the MBA program at UNR. Yeah, I think that's a trend we'll see more in public accounting for sure.
So if you have CPA license and you have MBA degree already, would you recommend that person to get MST when that person specifically focused in tax?
Potentially. It really comes down to that person's tax knowledge, but I'm starting the program in October. My answer may change then, but I think it's really worth considering for most people, just because there's so much tax law and there's so much case law regarding the tax law. It doesn't even matter how well you know it and can interpret it. It matters how well you know how every Ninth Circuit ruling has ever interpreted it. And there's so many applications and kind of opportunities to apply it to client circumstances that from what I understand and what I'm hoping to get out of this Master's of Science in Taxation program, I really think that anyone who's focusing in tax should consider.
And now you're not just always working on a full-time job. You're a partner at the firm, and you go back to school. How can you handle when you're doing both job at the same time?
I think it could be challenging. I'm also very fortunate that our firm just doesn't have the same culture as a lot of public accounting firms. I might work 2,300 hours this year. I might not. And if I do, I'll work 250 hours more than anyone else. It's just, we have high enough billing rates that we feel like the firm can make plenty of money with people working full time. We're not requiring people to put in 70-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks in tax season. I work about 55 hours a week in tax season. That being said, I did find a program that, because it focuses on practicing professionals, they they stop all classes from February 15th through April 15th. So there's no school requirements then, because they know that they've geared their program for practicing professionals, and so they're not going to put that burden on them in busy season. Also the program, it's 3.5 hours on Tuesday nights and it's 3.5 hours on Saturday mornings. So it might mean a little less time to golf. I might not be able to walk my dogs on Tuesday night, but my wife, who's also a CPA, is very supportive, and we've kind of talked through that. The things that I can't do on those nights, she's happy to take care of. And I think what will suffer most is my golf time on Saturday mornings, but I spend too much time on the course anyways, so that's all right.
I think your wife did come over at the Leadership Academy, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yes, she did. Yeah. She I've got family in North Carolina, so she flew out for the reception at the end, and then we spent the time with family. She'll be at Engage also, so I'm sure you'll see her then.
Nice. Cannot wait to see you both again. Go back to the topic about after you graduate, you start working in public. Did you try to study for CPA exam right after you graduate, or you work for a little bit and then you take CPA exam? Yeah,
I didn't do it right away, and I don't think I did it in the most efficient way. I definitely would recommend to people that they try to jump into it right away, just because when your brain is wired to study is the best time to kind of do the studying and the tests, and it's just the working is a different environment. Nevada has a little bit stricter rules. You actually have to have 4,000 hours of experience in public to get your license, and so that's 2 years full time. And so when I finished school, I was like, I'll wait till about the end of my 2 years and I'll start taking my tests. And then my 2 years passed, and then my 3 years passed, and then I was almost getting on 4, and I was like, I probably need to go do this now. And the motivation to get it kind of hurt, because you realize that whether you have the license or not, you're kind of doing the same job. Your ability to prepare tax returns, to tie out a trial balance, to generate work papers, getting the license doesn't impact that at all. It just impacts your ability to advance. And I knew a lot of people who had their license who weren't very good at their job. And so I was like, it made it hard to work hard for this thing. Our firm actually, to counteract the hours of tax season, we work reduced hours between October 15th and the end of the year. We only have to work 32 hours a week during that time. And so, on weeks with holidays where, Thanksgiving, for example, we get Thursday, Friday off. Well, then you get your extra day off. So it's a 2-day work week. And so I was like, I decided I'd start studying for my exams after October 15th. Actually in 2021, I just got my license. Got a full head of steam, and I took all 4 tests in 6 weeks, and I passed each on my first try. I wouldn't recommend doing that to anyone else, because I was almost not a human being during that time. It was, eat, sleep, and study for the CPA exams. But I got through all 4 in the 6 weeks of our shortened window and shortened work window, and that was that. But I wouldn't recommend waiting that long to anyone else.
Wow, that's very, very impressive. Such a short period of time, and then you pass them all in just one try. Wow.
I was lucky, and I'd also give some credit to Becker. Their practice exams are very accurate, and so I instead of working my way through the modules, I'd take a practice exam, identify, okay, here's, if there's 16 modules, there was anywhere from 7 to 11 that I was going to be fine on. And so then I would just go back and study those modules that I'd done poorly on in the practice exam, take another practice exam. Maybe there's 2 or 3 more I needed to go pay some more attention to, and then take their final prep exam. And I did that over 2 weeks for each test. I went 2 weeks test, 2 weeks test, 2 weeks test, 2 weeks test, and I was done.
Well, do you think that because you already have some experience on your hand before you take the exam, so it could be very helpful for you as well?
I think it helped a lot with BEC and with tax, and with reg, because those are kind of the things I work in. I think that had I worked in audit or FAR would have been easier. I definitely think that because I waited so long between college and now, and that we don't do much audit, we don't do hardly any gap work, and even our reviews are mainly tax basis, that definitely hurt me on the audit and gap side. Or the audit and FAR side, just because there were, plenty of things I hadn't been exposed to in years, but definitely my work experience helped me with reg and with BEC. So I actually took reg first, because I just figured I work in tax. This is going to be the easiest test for me. Let me try to start something with momentum. I took reg, and then I took audit, because I knew I wanted to put FAR after Thanksgiving weekend, since I'd have 5 days I could designate to just diving in and, eat, sleeping, and breathing FAR. So I definitely found, it's funny, I thought that was the hardest test. It's the test I felt the least confident about. It was the test I scored highest on, which doesn't make any sense. But, and then I took BEC last, because it just felt like if you pass the first 3, you can't, it's almost impossible to fail BEC.
You mentioned that the CPA license doesn't affect much in your career. But how about your promotion? Because I know that in California, a lot of firms, if you do not have CPA license, they cannot promote you to be managers. Some firms, exceptional, they do promote people without CPA license, but does that apply to your firm?
So I could have made manager. I actually was a manager before I got my CPA license. The most difficult parts about it were on business development as far as getting beyond manager. If I wanted to bring in clients, and a client asks you, oh, are you a CPA? You can't say yes if you're not. They don't ask, are you a tax accountant? Even though that's what they mean. They ask, are you a CPA? And so there's that. And, the ability to, sign returns and interact with the IRS and do those things. And so firm ownership had kind of laid out a plan for me. And they're like, well, you have to get your billings to a certain number and you have to be licensed, to be in the state of Nevada. You have to be licensed to own a public accounting firm. And so for me, it wasn't the promotion to manager, but it was the ability to partner that really, necessitated me to go get the license.
Yeah, talking about you being a partner, I know that it took you only 5 years, right?
Correct.
It's very, very fast for 5 years. And so I would like to dip more in your career about from the time when you start as a staff to become a partner as you are today. What were your top challenges when you start as a staff level at a small CPA firm after you graduate?
Some of the most challenging things for me were not necessarily the hard skills of accounting, but all of the things that go around it, organization. I am not a particularly organized person by nature. And, I could trace it all the way back to, turning in my homework in second grade, right? Where the teacher would say, oh, but you didn't show your work. Well, you think that doesn't matter, right? Because you got to the right answer. Until a manager is trying to review a work paper, doesn't matter if the answer is right. If they can't trace why it's right, the work paper is worthless. And so organization, both in, kind of how I put things together and how I presented my, my work and my ideas on work papers was a really big challenge for me. And then wasn't so much right away, but once I went from staff to senior and then started to go from senior to manager, the biggest challenge for me is that, and this came up at Leadership Academy plenty, was that my only, leadership experience and exposure really had been on athletic teams in, high school and a little bit in college. And so it's just the feedback I got from the, founding partner was, leadership in an accounting firm is very different than leadership on a sports field. On a sports field, tough love is great. If someone does bad, you can tell them they did bad and you need them to do better. Most staff accountants don't go into accounting for someone to tell them they did bad and they can do better. That was a really big roadblock I had to overcome, and I'm still working on overcoming. How to motivate people in a way that is, that in no way has kind of that conflict element or an element that would make them feel down, because it's a really hard job your first couple of years. You don't know what you're doing. You would think that in public accounting, we would come up with a better way of teaching people than assigning a bunch of stuff that you don't know how to do and hoping you remember 20% more than last time, but we haven't. And so you don't need a manager on top of you, making it seem harder than it is. And so kind of how to lead in an encouraging way, but still not giving people a false sense of confidence has been one of my bigger challenges.